Good morning. It's Mrs. Looper with the Lincoln Baptist Church 5th and 6th grade Overcomer Sunday School class. Now, last night I posted a video and I said I was going to put this video out there, so I want to get it out there. But I noticed there was a lot of views for how few of my Sunday school students are actually on Facebook. So I'm going to try to generalize this. So parents, I know a lot of churches had to cancel this morning. They're just doing main services. If you're looking for a little short lesson for your kids, feel free to just put them on here, and I'll try to keep the age more general, and we will have just a little tiny short lesson this morning, all right? Now, the lesson for this morning for my students, this is just an overview. We're actually going to go more in depth in this in the future, but today's story is on Jonah and the whale. If you've heard that before, you're going to be familiar with this, all right? Now, first of all, I've got a couple pictures here. All right, printed these off just for you guys. All right, now today we're going to be talking about Jonah. Now, in the Bible, if you have your Bible, go find it, guys. Go get your Bibles. All right, in the chapter 1 of the book of Jonah, okay? Now, I'm going to start in verse 2 here. Now, we know that God was talking to Jonah, and he says, "Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and cry against it, for their wickedness has come up before me." So, this was not a good city. All right, Nineveh was not a good city. They had a lot of wickedness, and God wasn't pleased with that. So he was going to send Jonah there to give a message, all right? So here we go. I'm going to show you my picture, okay? So here's Jonah. All right, I got a pretty nice little faceless Jonah there. All right, and God told him, go to Nineveh, all right? He wanted him to speak God's truth and God's gospel to those people, all right? Tell them to turn from their wicked ways. So we go on to the story, and I've got my Bible, just so you know. God continues, and anyway, the story continues. But Jonah, this is verse 3, rose up to flee unto Tarshish. What? From the presence of the Lord, and went down to Joppa. And he found a ship going to Tarshish, so he paid the fare, therefore, and went down into it to go with them unto Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. That's not good. Running from God, that doesn't sound like a very good decision, does it? All right, verse 4, "But the Lord sent out a great wind into the sea, and there was a mighty tempest in the sea, so that the ship was like to be broken." That's a pretty bad storm. I don't think I'd want to be on that ship. Would you? All right, so verse 5, "Then the mariners were afraid and cried on every man unto his God." So the mariners, these are going to be the guys that are like running the ship, okay? "And cast forth the wares that were in the ship unto the sea to lighten it of them. But Jonah was gone down into the sides of the ship, and he lay and was fast asleep." Verse 6, "So the shipmaster came to him and said unto him, What meanest thou, O sleeper? Arise, call upon thy God. If so, be that God will think upon us that we perish not." All right. So, just a little review here from what I'm reading. So, Jonah was told to go to Nineveh, and he didn't want to. What? That's, uh-oh. So he goes on a ship, and he heads in a different direction. And the direction he headed, not a very good direction. It was like the opposite of what he was supposed to be doing, all right? What God called him to do. So he went the opposite direction. And because of that, God was like, oh, we got to give you a little wake-up call. We got to say, hey, we don't do that, all right? So he sent a storm. You see my storm right here? Oh, I don't know. Maybe it's going to focus. All right, there's our storm. There was a storm. But where was Jonah? Did you listen? Were you listening to the story, guys? Jonah was at the bottom of the ship sleeping. He was sleeping. Okay, first of all, I agree with Jonah. Storms are kind of relaxing. I actually like to sleep in a storm because the rain is so calming, and that rumble of the thunder is like a bass, yeah. Anyway, that's not what we're going to go into here. We're not going to talk about how much you like a storm or not. Now, the story continues, and I'm going to go more in depth in that in my actual Sunday school class. But what ends up happening is that Jonah gets called out. So I'm going to kind of get right this. This is also for Sunday school teachers and parents. If you guys are looking for a good book, this is called Bible Story Snapshots. It is by Dr. Scott Hanks, and this is the Old Testament one. And I'm actually going to read some of this for you. And the question is, are you running? Okay? So let's go back into this. I'm going to just kind of review here. Jonah was a Jew who was told by God to go to Nineveh, the Assyrian captain, and preach against it, right? God wanted them to turn away from their wickedness, okay? That was not pleasing to God. Now, instead of going to Nineveh, Jonah tried to run from the presence of the Lord and got on a ship and went the opposite way to Tarshish. God sent a mighty wind that threatened to break the ship, and the mariners on the ship told every man, you got to pray to their God. Lowercase God, right? Lowercase g God. And then when they found Jonah sleeping on the ship, they're like, hey, come on now. Step 2. You guys you need to start praying. Jonah, you need to pray to your God. Now, come to find out, they finally figured out that this storm was because Jonah was disobeying God. And Jonah told them that they needed to throw him overboard. They didn't want to, but they did end up doing it. And after Jonah was thrown overboard, guess what happened? The storm stopped. Now, here's just a little picture for next time. All right? There's your whale. We're going to talk about that some other time, okay? But for now, what we need to focus on is some points here, okay? So here's some important truths from the lesson we have today. First of all, you can't run from God, right? God is all-knowing and all-powerful. He knows. He knew where Jonah was. He knows where we are, okay? The next truth is God will ask us to do things we don't always want to do sometimes. Jonah didn't really want to go to Nineveh. It was known for being a wicked city, and that took him out of his comfort zone. But sometimes God calls us to do stuff like that, like share the gospel with people, tell people about Jesus. That can make us uncomfortable. But it's a good thing, and God will bless us, opposed to the punishment. Here it goes. Ready? The storms in our lives are sometimes self-inflicted, all right? Sometimes people make choices that affect their lives forever. Sometimes it's not as bad as other times, but our decisions do impact the future of our life. Because I've heard it said like this, there's consequences. And when we think of consequences, we most of that time are going to, wow, my English is so good today. Most of the time we connect that with like, oh, I did something, I'm going to get a punishment if I didn't do it. Like my mom told me clean my room, and I'm going to be in trouble, and I'm going to have to be grounded to my room, right? But sometimes there's good consequences, all right? If Jonah hadn't run away, there would have been more blessings, okay? But instead, he did have to have that storm sent his way. Now, Jonah ends up later on in the stomach of a whale. We'll talk about that later on, okay? So that's all I want to share with you guys this morning. Hopefully you enjoyed that. You enjoyed these pictures. You guys can leave a comment below with your name and your age. And I'm going to ask you a question, all right? To where did Jonah try to run? All right, you answer that in the comments below, okay? All right, see you guys later. Have a great day and stay healthy.